to part 2 of Is the Hummer EV a Real Rock Crawler? Today we're going to be looking at some relevant specifications and features of the Hummer EV, and in particular, a possibly false breakover angle. Even though the Hummer EV may have insufficient torque to carry itself through harsh off-road situations, it does have some pretty cool features. First off, the Hummer's awesome suspension that is completely adjustable and allows for maximum low-speed articulation even when it's at full ride height. The only not so cool thing about the Hummer suspension is the fact that it's independent, and that the sway bar up front does not have a disconnect. Thankfully, there is no sway bar on the rear, so you do have a little bit more articulation on the rear than the front. One of the biggest reasons that manufacturers switch from a straight axle design to an independent design is because on paper, the clearance is way better. You're lopping off the pumpkin and the A-arms tuck up here nicely. But what's the price? Well, the price is that it limits articulation, number one, and number two, in a straight axle design, when you come off a ledge and slam down, the lowest point is unsprung mass. So that distance never changes. The only squish you'll get is from the tires. Whereas an independent suspension, the lowest point is part of the sprung mass, which means it can lower down, slam onto that rock, and then bounce up. That's body damage. That's no good. Second, crab walk, basically a rerun of the old quadra-steer system that you had on Silverados and Sierras of years past. This time, though, it also comes with the ability for all four wheels to turn in the same direction, basically allowing you to scoot sideways. Third, a bazillion cameras all around the vehicle, including ones that show you what your skid plate is seeing, each with little dedicated squirt guns to clean them off when you go through a mud puddle. Also, they have selectable lockers for the front and rear differentials. The rear differential lock isn't really a differential lock in the mechanical sense. It's basically syncing the rear two motors together. And by the way, this Hummer is not following in the footsteps of the H2 and H3 by getting skinnier and skinnier. No, it's getting even wider than the H1. A track width of 73.3 inches and an overall body width of 86.7 inches. GMC claims that when their Hummer EV is in extract mode, it has 15.9 inches of ground clearance, can climb an 18-inch vertical wall, has 13 inches of travel at each wheel, a departure angle of 38.4 degrees, an angle of attack of 49.7 degrees. Pretty fantastic. Not quite as good as the old Hummer H1s, but hey, it's just because they moved the axle a little bit farther in. And most unbelievable of all, a 32.2 degree breakover angle. That's too good to be true, because it's not true. Let's find out why. Breakover angle is the relationship between the wheelbase of a vehicle and the ground clearance at the center of the wheelbase. For the Hummer EV, it's 135.6-inch wheelbase and a claimed clearance in extract mode of 15.9 inches. The problem is, using those two numbers gives you about 26.4 degrees as your breakover angle, not 32.2 degrees. So where did they get that enormously bigger number? Well, number one, maybe they put 37-inch tires on because after all, they claim it can run those. Well, a 2-inch increase in diameter would lead to a 1-inch increase in clearance, which would bring your clearance to 16.9 inches. But that only gets you to about 28 degrees. So maybe they're measuring their clearance from somewhere else besides the center of the wheelbase. It should technically be at the control arm, since that is the lowest part of a vehicle when it has fully independent suspension. But ground clearance wasn't being measured from the control arms, because when the adjustable air suspension pushes the truck up, only the angle of the control arms changes, not its clearance. Whereas from the skid plate, the clearance actually does change when the air suspension pushes the truck up. Maybe there's some indentation in the middle of the wheelbase, but I'm not thinking so, because all we've seen so far tells us that the skid plate is smooth all the way down. We'll give them an extra inch just because. As you can see, I've thought about this from a number of different angles. Even when we say they have 37-inch tires, which will give them an extra inch of ground clearance and throw another inch of ground clearance on for no good reason, it only gets it to 29.6 degrees of breakover angle, not 32.2 degrees. Where are they getting that number? I'm not sure. And I don't like shifty marketing because so many magazines have been saying, whoa, this is an unbelievable breakover angle, and no one has questioned it so far. I'm not saying that I'm absolutely right, but until someone explains to me how you can magically get the 4 more inches of ground clearance necessary to make that number work, I'm not believing it. I tried asking General Motors and GMC several times through several different routes, and no one's gotten back to me yet. But it's only been a year, so I get it. Overall, I think the Hummer EV Edition 1 pickup is a really cool, slightly obese rig that simply lacks the low-end torque to be a hands-down rock crawler. This doesn't mean it's not good for drifting on the sand dunes or road racing, but it's not a rock crawler. Now, there are some good EV rock crawlers supposedly coming to the market, such as the Bollinger B2 and B1 with nice portal gears and selectable high and lows transfer cases. And the Rivian, it's like a lot cheaper and a lot better. It can tow more, haul more, and frankly climb steeper slopes. So if you really need an electric vehicle that can rock crawl, you've got two options. Either don't buy the Hummer EV or spend like 30,000 bucks building your own 2-speed transfer cases. Thanks for watching Redneck Physics.